Welcome to the behind the scenes of the Yarn Thing podcast with Marly Bird. I'm your host, Marly Bird. Of course, you know that. You're here on the Marly Bird Facebook channel. So, hopefully you know this is me. This is me in my glory. We are going to be going live here in less than 1 minute.
Until showtime.
Right there. And we are talking to the lovely Carol Sulkoski today. And you'll notice that the sound is a little bit louder today. I have actually called in over the computer today to Blog Talk Radio, and I'm using my big microphone to call in. So hopefully we are hoping we don't have any technical issues as far as my sound getting disconnected or my voice getting disconnected. If we do, I have my trusty phone right here to call in just in case. Carol knows the drill. She's good with this. If for some reason I get disconnected, it won't affect you guys. You guys should see me just fine, but Tammy will take over the show and get things going. So we'll see. Once again, we have Carol Sulkoski on the podcast today to talk about...
Hi, everybody.
Hi, everybody. To talk about her brand new book, Self-Striped Yarn Studio. And so if you know Carol, she has some really great books out there, all, around yarn studio stuff. So here we go.
4, 3, 2, 1.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Yarn Thing podcast with Marly Bird. I'm your host, Marly Bird. You can catch the Yarn Thing podcast live every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 10 o'clock Mountain Time. That's 12 o'clock on the East Coast, 9 o'clock on the West Coast, and 11 o'clock in the Midwest. If you're anywhere else in the world and would like to join us live for the podcast, please Google what time 10 o'clock Mountain Time is for you. I do live in Denver, Colorado, and you can come and join the fun. There is a live chat that happens on blogtalkradio.com/yarn thing during the live broadcast. So if you're watching or listening to the show, listening to the show live, and you want to participate in the chat room over on Blog Talk Radio, please go over there, log in, and join me there. And then ever since Facebook Live became available to me, I've been doing behind the scenes of all of the Yarn Thing podcast episodes. And you can watch me as I interview our guest over on my Facebook page. So if you just go to facebook.com/Marly Bird, you can see me over there. And I'm looking quite righteous today. My hair is all straight. I have makeup on, so that's good. So it's a lot of fun.
You always look good.
You're just a flatterer. That's what you are. And then this is something brand new. On Tuesday, I actually downloaded the Facebook Live and I added a couple edits and then I uploaded it to YouTube, hoping that my YouTube family will see that, hey, the podcast is kind of fun and come and join us over here. So there are so many different ways for you to catch this podcast and listen to some of the best people in the industry and come and join the fun. There you have it. Let's say thank you to our lovely sponsors and then we'll jump into the show. Thank you to Green Mountain Spinnery, Buffalo Wool Company, Creative Bug, Erin Lane Bags, Lolo by Barmaids, Craftsy.com, Knitters Magazine, XRX Books and Stitches Expos, and last but certainly not least, Red Heart Yarns, where I'm the proud national spokesperson. Today's guest is a really good friend of mine, and I absolutely love her. Seriously, from the moment we met, it's like we were kindred spirits, and our sense of humor is the same. We just have a great time together. And sadly, I don't see her nearly enough in my life because she lives on the East Coast. And as you know, I live in Denver and, she's just crazy busy. And I'm excited that she's able to take some time out of her schedule and join me on the show today. And I'm talking about my good friend, Carol Sulkoski, who has a brand new book out called Self-Striped Yarn Studio. So without further ado, let's welcome Carol to the podcast. Hi, Carol.
Hi, I'm so happy to be here.
I'm so happy you're here. I know that last time, we had some sort of a disconnect, but it turned out okay. Everything was all right, but I'm so glad you're able to make it today.
Thank you. Me too.
So let's let people know a little. First off, how are you? You have a kid in college now. There have been big life changes since the last time you've been on the podcast.
Yes, my oldest left for college this fall.
And how are you doing with that?
Well, on the one hand, I miss him dreadfully, but on the other hand, between texting and Skyping and the phones, and between the fact that I'm just so thrilled that he has this opportunity,
yeah,
I I'm able to keep in touch with him, and I'm just so excited that he's getting this chance. So I can't sit around feeling sorry for myself because I know he's having a wonderful time.
Oh, that's great. And I mean, I know that he's wicked brilliant, and I'm excited for him too. Like, I think that it's just so much fun.
Yeah.
All right, so let's let people know a little bit about you and kind of give us the story of you. How did you get started knitting, and when did it become something that you were like, I really want to do more designing with knitting and dyeing yarn? And because you are also the owner of Black. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Funny fiber.
Thank you.
That's all right.
If you're watching YouTube, you can like see my brain just went blank completely. I'm like, I was going to call it black fur. I'm like, no, that's not it. What is it?
Oh, wow.
I know.
Well, you know, it's funny. If you don't Google Black Bunny fibers and you just Google Black Bunny, you get some very different things.
Yes, I bet.
So
I bet.
At your own risk.
That's hilarious. All right, so I'm going to let you take it away.
Okay. I, like so many of us, I learned to knit when I was a kid. My mom taught me. And I did it for a little while, but it didn't really stick. And then I came back to it as an adult when I was working and looking for a way of kind of doing something that wasn't so technical and looking for something to give me stress relief and relaxation. And knitting was wonderful for that. And I just kept getting more and more into it. And it was right around the time when the internet was kicking off and becoming really interesting and full of things. Blogs were starting to hit, and I just kind of got sucked into this whole world and met a lot of people online and then in person. And I kept knitting, and I started blogging. I worked part-time at a shop. At the time, I had 3 young children, including a set of twins, so it was kind of crazy at home, and I loved getting out to the shop on the weekends as a way to kind of just have some time doing something, you know, away from all the hustle and bustle of the young children. And things just kind of snowballed from there. I started writing a blog, and people started reading it. I did a lot of book reviews, which people liked, and I think that drew a lot of people in. And then as I'd been knitting, I had often thought, oh, I really like this pattern, but I sort of think I want to do this instead, or I change, you know, instead of doing ribbing, I'm going to do moss stitch. And I started tweaking patterns. Then I started thinking, well, oh, I have this skein of yarn, but it's the wrong gauge. But if I take this pattern and change a few things, I can kind of make it work. And then I started to get ideas for things that I wanted to make that, you know, I didn't see a pattern for. And that was sort of how I fell into designing.
I love it. Keep going.
And then that's why I love when people are fearless knitters and they're not afraid to try new things, when they're willing to just experiment and play around with things, because I think you can learn so much that way, and it really helps to kind of nurture your own creativity.
Yeah, absolutely.
And then, you know, I also used to write stuff on my blog, sort of explanations of things, and people encouraged me to submit knitting magazines, and then along with 2 other friends, I got a book contract, my first book contract with Interweave, which is now F&W, and that was Knit So Fine. We had loved working with fine gauge yarns, and we felt like a lot of knitters were afraid of them, so we thought, why not write a book that included patterns for fine gauge yarns for things like sweaters and skirts and other things that people would find appealing. And after that, then I started to teach and wrote more books and submitted articles to magazines and got them published, and it kind of all flowed from there. I started dyeing as a total fluke. My oldest was, you know, an elementary school kid at the time, and he was always one of those kids who was sort of needed things to keep him busy. He was like a busy bee, and he loved doing like science-y experiments and cooking and things like that. So I read online about Kool-Aid dyeing and thought, oh, I bet he would get into that, and then maybe I can make him a hat with the yarn we dye, and he'll wear it instead of taking it off and throwing it. So we did that, and he loved it, and we had such a good time. And I talked about it on my blog, and people were really sweet and encouraging about the yarn, and I kept doing it because I found it fascinating. And then people started saying, oh, you know, if you offered that for sale, you should start an eBay shop or an Etsy shop, and I'd buy that. So I thought, what the heck, and just started to learn a little bit more about kind of a more professional process and sourcing yarns and finding dyes. And that's how the dyeing started.
That's so cool. I love it. I love how everything just kind of, it just all flows in and becomes something more just out of something so simple. And it's just so much fun. Now, I know that your first book, Lace Yarn, not Lace Yarn Studio, the, Fine. What was it one more time? It's
Knit So Fine.
Knit So Fine. I remember seeing that book at the yarn store and I was just like, oh my gosh, this is beautiful, because there weren't that many books out there with, people who are making stuff with such fine weight yarn. And so that was my first informal introduction to you, as I was like, oh, I know this name. And so then as I became, friends with you, I started looking up more that you did and stuff. I was just like, oh, I'm such a fan of yours because I like your style. I like your aesthetic. I like what you do. Do you have a favorite type of knitting that you like to do? Like, like Brooke loves lace and, like Fiona loves cables. Do you have something that you love?
I like to play with a lot of different things. I really do love hand-painted yarns and striping yarns, but I also lately have been in this Fair Isle obsession, stranded knitting.
Yeah.
So, so I think I just like to play with different things, and the variety I think is interesting. And I also like combining different methods too. I think that's sort of interesting. Mm-hmm. Combining cables and lace, or a self-striper and lace, or whatever, just to kind of see what happens.
That's perfect. So the Yarn Studio books, how did they come into fruition? Because, it's a really great theme that you have happening there with the Sock Yarn Studio, Lace Yarn Studio, and then Self-Striping Yarn Studio. It makes total sense. And I love that you're able to put together these books that really showcase what the yarn can do, and you collaborate with some really great designers to do that. So tell me a little bit about the Yarn Studio books in general.
Well, Sock Yarn Studio was kind of an obvious thing to turn to because I did love using sock yarns a lot, and I dyed a lot of them, and I saw what people wanted to do with them. And, it was just at the time when the sock yarn craze was starting to peak. And I thought there were still a lot of people out there who only thought of sock yarn in terms of socks, or who felt like the fact that it was such thin yarn meant that it would take forever, or, they just didn't understand all of the options available to them, whether they're self-patterning yarns or solids or luxury fibers. So I really, wanted to showcase kind of all the things that you could do with sock yarn other than knitting socks. Mm-hmm. And after that book came out, my agent asked me, what would I think about doing next? And I said, I kind of want to do the same thing with lace weight yarn, talk about things that lace weight yarn is good for other than lace. Because, again, I think it's such a versatile weight of yarn, because so many of us live in climates where it's not that you don't. But I live in a place where you can't wear a really thick sweater most of the year, and some winters we don't even have much cold weather at all.
Really? I didn't know that.
Yeah, it's not unusual for us to have a winter where it doesn't snow that often, or it snows once or twice and that's it. And so I thought, lace yarns just have so much versatility. Let's showcase how airy they are, and the drape, and how when you knit them on big needles, you get this puff of cloud that's so cool. So the self-striping book was really just because I have always loved these yarns. I have spent a lot of time trying to figure them out. And I would often get asked questions when teaching about the way the self-stripers work, or people would say, well, I don't like using them because I get these weird places where the colors don't look right. Mm-hmm. Or I like to do two different colorways together, but sometimes the color doesn't pop, and then I don't know what to do with it.
Right.
And so I kind of collected a bunch of these different questions and issues, and I really wanted to do a book on stripers, because I felt like even though there were so many gorgeous patterns for them, no one had ever really sort of sat out and explained how they work and why they do what they do. And so that's the first part of the book, is a technical section, which goes through, the length of the repeat, the different effects. Some yarns are plied, some are not, and sometimes the plies change color. And so I just wanted to help people understand them, because I think if you understand what you're dealing with, then you can have so much more fun using them, because you're not frustrated as much.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's funny because, the whole unplanned pooling sort of stuff is a frustration for so many. And then right now it is such a huge craze in the crochet world to purposely plan pooling, very similar to what Laura Bryant did for knitting. You know what I mean, in her last book?
Yeah, her book is beautiful.
Oh, yeah, it's gorgeous. I mean, it's amazing. And there's so much information in there. So now the crocheters are totally super excited about pooling stuff. So it's a perfect fit. It's a perfect fit. So I think that's great. So let's talk about the new book, Self-Striping Yarn. And it's one of those things that people might be like, oh, isn't all yarn self-striping if it comes in multiple colors? So I'm going to say first, why don't you explain to people what self-striping yarn is? What qualifies as self-striping yarn?
So when I talk about self-striping yarn, I'm not talking about yarn that just has different colors in it. I'm talking about yarn that has longer lengths of each color, and because the lengths are longer, they actually create stripes in the knitting instead of just little segments of color blobs here and there. Essentially, when certain yarns are dyed, different lengths of each color are applied to the yarn and make the colors that you see. Hand-painted yarns, for example, often use very small segments of each color, 1 or 2 inches long of a color, maybe a little more. Sometimes they use flecks or specks of a color. And because the color only lasts for a few stitches, it's not long enough to actually make a stripe. But in true self-striping yarns, the single color will last long enough to go all the way across a row or a round.
Okay.
And that gives you an actual stripe. There are a lot of different factors that enter into what the stripes look like, and I talk about that. I talk about what factors have to do with the actual way the yarn is dyed, as well as factors that have to do with the way it's knit up, the circumference of the knitting, the gauge, and things like that, because you can tweak your yarns and your pattern to get stripes that are thinner or thicker or more balanced, depending on what you're trying to achieve.
Perfect. So what made you decide you wanted to do a book on this, to show all the different aspects of how it can be used?
Yeah, it's interesting because I've always been fascinated by stripers from the first time I started knitting with a ball of yarn that's striped. And I never got over the magic of just knitting along and then boom, it changes color, and then you knit a little more and it changes again. That, I don't know, maybe I'm simple-minded, but I find that so fascinating, and you don't have to weave in all the ends. It's more economical because you can use multiple skeins. You can use one color instead of multiple skeins. One colorway of a striper might have 6 different colors in, and you end up not having to buy 6 separate balls of yarn in each color. But I think that stripers can also be a little tricky for people. If you look at some patterns, there are certain types of patterns that really accentuate the stripes. And when I looked to designers and asked them to submit, I really had some specific ideas about using the yarns involved. For example, multi-directional or modular knitting is one thing that self-stripers do really well, because when you change the direction of the knitting, you change the direction of the stripes, and it kind of accentuates and gives you, lines that contrast as well as are parallel. So that was one thing that self-stripers do really well. They are very good for doing stranded knitting, or some people call it faux aisle.
Yeah.
Both Barb Brown and Patty Lyons have patterns that use, instead of using one solid color and then a whole bunch of balls of contrast colors, you just use one striper. Yeah. And instead of weaving in all those ends and changing colors, the yarn changes color for you, the contrast color. So it's always fresh and always new.
I'm doing something with that right now, actually. And I figured it's actually something, so it's a new design of mine, and I'm doing it to do like an introduction to Fair Isle, because I figured it's a really easy way to show people how they can do Fair Isle, but allow them to get the color changes that they might want to do without having to change the colors. I was like, this is brilliant.
That's an excellent idea.
Thank you very much.
Yeah, because then it's a great, people think about doing it for fun, but yeah, it's a great way to introduce people to it, because then when they're done, they don't have to sit around and weave it 45 ends.
Exactly.
Like, why did I do this? Not that that's that big a deal, but when you're new, it's nice to kind of get that gratification a little faster.
Right. Exactly. So here you are. So you have, all these great ideas to do with self-striping sock yarn. You call out to your friends and you say, hey, let's put this book together, and let's talk to me about some of the designs that you got and some of the, what, how about this? How did you break up the book? How did you present the book? What kind of information can the knitter expect when they pick up the book and buy it?
Okay, so the first thing that you find when you open the book is a technical section, which is all about stripers. It talks about different types of yarns. It talks about why yarns stripe, why they make different width or circumference stripes. I talk about gradient yarns and how they relate to this whole process. I talk about yarns that change color ply by ply instead of the whole strand, so that part of the yarn changes, but part of it doesn't, or changes in a different direction. And I talk about common trouble spots that people will find that, you start knitting and then there's a knot and the color changes abruptly. So I help talk about, I talk to people about what to do in that case. Or you're binding off stitches for an armhole and then all of a sudden the stripes are a different width and the top of the sweater looks different from the bottom and funky. So I talk about how to fix that. And then the rest of the book is patterns, which are divided into 3 categories based on the weight of the yarn. I just think if you are trying to either buy yarn or you have yarn in your stash, you have a sense for whether it's worsted or DK or fingering weight. And this way it's a little bit easier to find the yarn you want or to match yarn to a pattern. And as far as, I have to say I have the most amazing, generous, and talented designer friends in the world, including yourself.
Oh.
When I throw out ideas and kind of explain what I'm looking for, sometimes I have a specific idea, and sometimes I just want to see what people will come up with, and people come up with the most amazing things. Amy Gunderson,
yes,
who is an amazing designer, and
she really is.
Yarn.
She really is. She's amazing.
So much fun. We love her.
She's awesome.
She did this amazing hexagon sweater. It's made up of little hexagon motifs that are joined as you go, and they create the front and the back of the sweater, and it almost looks like stained glass. It's incredible.
Yeah, it's beautiful.
It's a stunner.
It really absolutely is. Like, there's no other way to say it.
Yeah. And Sandy Rosner, who's another amazing, amazing person.
Love her.
Did a cardigan that has intarsia, and it sounds harder than it looks, but you get vertical zigzags of color, and each zigzag is started at a different place in the repeat, so that the colors contrast as they go up.
It's amazing. Amazing.
It is amazing.
She's so talented. And they have her over there at Premiere too. So Premiere and Universal, they get all the good people.
Those people, that Yansha has an eye for talent.
Isn't she awesome too? Like, they're just good people. They're just good people. And then you throw in Deborah Norville in that whole mix, and it's just like it's great. God. It's awesome. Anyways, keep going.
It's a killer.
It really is.
Fiona Ellis did this beautiful piece that combines a sort of lacy pattern and bands of lace, and then she knit the self-striper using short rows so that it kind of is on the bias, so that the stripes are not kind of flat and parallel to the ground. They kind of go off in different directions. That's a really great piece. It's incredible. There's a designer from Philadelphia named Erica Flory who did a scarf with slip stitches, and she kind of used the striper as the background and then almost frames columns in the slip stitches, which gives a really amazing effect. That's called the track scarf. Marley Bird has a lovely cowl, and it uses both vertical and horizontal elements, which I think is another interesting thing to do with stripers. The yarn stripes horizontally, and there's bands of garter stitch that go horizontally, but then there's also kind of a vertical eyelet pattern.
Yeah.
So those two directions give it a lot of visual interest, and I think that's another really cool look with stripes. But I want to ask you, Missy, while I have you, the title of your cowl is it Asymptotes?
Sounds good.
I
don't, you know what, I gotta look it up again. I looked up, I don't even remember what I was looking up. I think, hold on, how do you spell ASYMP? Here we go.
ASYMPTOC, yeah.
All right, so it says, a line that continually approaches a given curve, but does not meet it at any finite distance. So I was like, all right, well, that's kind of cool. I was thinking of the lines of color, like they all just kind of morph into each other. But then you have those long vertical lines that you were just talking about with the lace. And so that's why I picked that name. I was like, oh, well, that's kind of cool. It's just, it's funky. It's different. So there you go. You know what? And the podcasters or podcast listeners know, like I have a history of naming things, and then people always change the name, so I never even think about it very much anymore. But what kills me is when I name something and then it doesn't get changed, and I'm like, oh yeah, that's right. What did I name that? You know what I mean? So I don't know. It's like I don't remember. You know, but yeah. So that's what that was all about. I was like, oh well, that's just kind of
people will change the name, and then knitters will ask me what the name means, and I'm like, I don't know.
Right. Well, my best story is when I did my book with Interweave, I didn't name anything appropriate or anything like that was supposed to be like the permanent name, because I thought for sure they were going to change the names, because they always change it when I do stuff for the magazine. So I literally named one of the projects Big Pink Hat, and in the book it's called Big Pink Hat. That's
hilarious.
Right? I know. There's the cover of the book is the Green Mountain Spinnery hooded scarf. And that's what it's called, because that's what I made it out of.
I love it.
You know, you just don't know sometimes. So yeah, so that's how I got that name. Is I was looking up names to go along with kind of what you and I had talked about the striping and stuff. So that's where that came from. So now you know. tell people
now I know.
Google it. It's fun. Right. I love the assortment of stuff you have in here. And I really do believe that people are going to look at this book, whether they're at Barnes & Noble or they're going to, look through all the pictures on Ravelry, which I think is brilliant. I love being able to go to Ravelry and look at everything and say to themselves, I didn't realize. Or maybe
they'll go to their local yarn shop.
Yes, that was going to be the next thing I said. But I think that they will look through it and not realize how many different things they could do with self-striping yarn and be able to pick some up at their local yarn store. And I mean, this book, quite honestly, I think would be a great teaching book, at local yarn stores if they have a local, a teacher that works with them. Have the students buy the book and all of you guys work through different projects in the book, because it's a great way to learn how to manipulate stitches, to manipulate with color. And I mean, it's just fun.
Thank you. That means a lot.
I think you've done such a great job. And now let's talk about the designs you did too, because it's not like everybody else just did stuff in the book for you. You did some wonderful designs. And I love that you have a good variety going on here. Now, the wristlets, how do you say that name? I'm terrible at pronouncing names.
Vauclane.
And what does that mean?
You want to hear a story about naming patterns? I'm going to out myself. Sometimes it's really hard to think of a lot of names all at once.
Yeah.
You well know.
Yeah.
And so I had like about 8 patterns I had to name, and I just didn't know what to do. And so I was driving my kids around to meet their friends and stuff, and I ended up just taking a lot of street names from the streets in the neighborhood.
I do that too.
So that's actually the name of the street. Township.
Yep.
And so a lot of the ones of mine are named. Barclayton is one. Belrose is one. Wildhaven. They're all street.
Isn't that perfect? That's perfect. I do the exact same thing. Because it makes sense. But those are so cute. Those little wristlets, and they're not difficult.
Yeah.
That's why I wanted.
They're so easy to knit.
Yes.
You'd be shocked.
Yeah.
Because they're not knit in the round. They're knit flat, and I use the eyelets that naturally occur in the lace to make the buttonholes, so you don't even have to do any separate buttonholes.
Yeah. They're so super cute.
Yeah, and they're pretty flexible and fit. I made them with 2 different colorways to get that really sharp contrast, and it's a beautiful Scoselle yarn called Zauberball.
Yeah.
I used a sort of red into burgundy colorway and then a gray, white, and black one.
Yeah.
If you used a gradient yarn, you could get a very different effect, or you could do from the front and the end of a gradient yarn and get your own unique stripes. They were fun.
That's awesome. Now, the Barclayton stole. Can I just tell you that you could easily rename that and hashtag it Super Scarf, and it could totally be part of the Super Scarf craze that is happening right now. Like it is so awesome. Like I would totally wrap up in that piece.
Yeah, I was wearing it at Rhinebeck, and it is really cozy. And again, like surprisingly easy. The hardest part is just sort of casting on all the stitches because you go horizontally. But a bunch of the rows are plain rows that don't have any patterning in them. So you can do one patterned row and then kind of sit back for a while and do a couple plain ones, which makes it easy too.
Yeah. Yeah, that's totally a super scarf. You need to do that because it's awesome. It's awesome. Who knew it? You were on top of it before everybody else. It's so much fun. It's so much fun. Now, the ramblewood throw. Talk to me a little bit about that because people could be like, well, how did she get the colors to do that with the little squares? Or, you know what I mean? Like, how did you make that piece?
Well, I was actually inspired by quilts because I noodle around with quilting whenever I have small amounts of free time. And so one thing that, there's the 9-patch block, which are the ones with the multiple squares, which are similar to a quilting block that have 9, patches of different colors. And what I did was I knit the 9 patches. I used intarsia, and I would do 3 colors across, twisting as I switched colors up until I got a third of the way up, and then I switched to 3 different colors, and then I'd switch back. And because each ball of yarn, there were 2 different colorways used for that one, and each one had slightly different colors in it, so I was able to start at a blue section in one yarn and then a red section in another to make sure there was contrast in between the squares.
Very cool.
I used intarsia for, if you look at the picture in the book, the bottom left, you can see there's a square that's knit so that it has 2 skinny columns and 1 wide column, and that was also done in tarsia style. I also just kind of wanted to mess around and play with what the stripers can do, so I knit a couple just plain without any, just in stockinette stitch to show you what the yarn did naturally. And then I did a couple that were just using like 2-row stripes because I thought that would be kind of fun to see how they worked, and they kind of make a different effect too. So it was really just kind of an attempt to noodle around and show some of the different things that a striper can do. It's also a good way to use up odds and ends because it doesn't take much to make a little portion of a square or square. And if you do things like stripes or intarsia, you can kind of work in different colors. I think it'd be really fun to do in just like all the colors of the rainbow too.
Oh, yeah. Like that would be super pretty.
Yeah, it will be a lot of fun.
Oh, yeah,
The yarn is
totally.
nice. It's universal classic shades, and it is easy care. So that makes it nice for a throw. If your cat barfs on it or something, you can easily pop it in the wash, and it'll look just as nice.
I'm sorry. Because
You
never know.
You know how much I love my cat, and my cat is like my best friend.
Boris.
So.
Yes, we love Boris.
Yes, he has long hair, so not so.
Oh gosh, that's so funny. I love it. Now let's talk a little bit about the yarns because some people, might not. Some people might know about long color changing yarn and know that there's what's available out there, Noro, what's Premier, and whatnot. I'm also going to mention Red Heart Unforgettable is a long color changing yarn. Those of you who are wondering about that. The Red Heart Super Saver Neon Stripes is actually a really long color changing yarn and it creates striping, but you can mess around with that a little bit.
That'd be perfect for the throw then, yeah.
Yeah, like there's all sorts of different things you can try out. So it's as she said earlier, it's not just variegated yarns. But talk to me about the yarns that you chose.
Nice because
Go ahead.
There are yarns that are made of everything under the sun.
Yes.
From acrylic to luxury fibers to wool to every blend. There are yarns at all different price points. You can find them in big box places as well as yarn shops and online. So they're accessible now. It didn't used to be as easy to find them. And then there's also really boutique hand dyers like Freya does stripers. So,
yes.
And your Knit Circus, is that what it's called?
Yes.
So there's also artisanal dyers who are doing really unique ones. And that's kind of fun. That's a change in the last 10 years. There were only a few games in town when it came to stripers, and now there's just so much more variety. So I think that's also fun to explore, all the things that are out there for you.
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't have the book right in front of me. Do you have it in front of you that you could talk about some of the yarns that you did use? Yeah. So I was going to ask you, talk about the yarns that you did use. So maybe somebody has it in their stash and they could say, well, this would be really good.
Right. I actually used this, some 6-ply or sport weight sock yarn to make the baby jacket. It's called the Fairfax Baby Jacket. And that's kind of fun because sock yarn is washable, machine washable, and sturdy.
Yeah.
And it also comes in lots of wild striping patterns. So if you've got a ball or two of 6-ply stock yarn in your stash, you can make an adorable baby jacket. The Belrose Tam is made with Debbie Bliss Rialto print, which is a striper. And I used 3 different colorways for that, not so much because of the yardage, but because I wanted to make it just kind of look like all different colors under the sun. I have to say hi to my test knitter, Jen, who knit that one for me. She did a beautiful job of sort of picking. She'd do 2 rows in one color, then 2 rows in another, and she kind of did a really great job in picking colors because there's all this like beautiful jewel tone contrast. So I love the Rialto DK. It's superwash merino. It's extra fine merino. It's got a beautiful hand. The hexagon sweater, the one that we've been raving about, is done in Wisdom Yarn's Saki Bamboo, which is a sock yarn, and that has, I think, superwash merino, nylon, and bamboo fiber in it. One thing that's interesting about that one, if you queued up the picture on Ravelry, is it looks so gorgeous the way the colors played out. But when Amy knit it, she said she didn't change or manipulate the colors in any way. She literally just knit it as the yarn gave it to her. And that's just kind of a fun thing to see how the yarn on its own will just do amazing things. The Damask Iris Cowl by Barb Brown, which is a beautiful stranded pattern, absolutely breathtaking. That uses, I think it's Estonian or Lithuanian yarn called Kauni, Kauni.
Uh-huh.
And it's a slow merging yarn. It starts one color and kind of slowly morphs into another.
It's one of those where you see it. It's one of those where you see it in the ball, and it's like, oh, that is so pretty. I've got to buy that. I have some over in my shelf over there that I'm just like, I don't know what I'm going to do with it yet, but I had to buy it because it was just so pretty.
Yeah, it is a really pretty yarn. And then, of course, there's lots of Noro in the book because Noro was sort of one of the first companies who made stripers, and they always have a wide variety of them. A lot of them involve luxury fibers, a little silk, a little mohair, a little this, a little that. But a lot of the patterns use Nora Silk Garden, which is a mohair wool silk blend, Noro Crayon, which is one of the best known of the Noros. And, there's just something about the way that Mr. Noro makes up colorways that is breathtaking. He just has an amazing eye for color.
Right.
So they're always fun to use, too.
Yeah, I think that's great. The different yarns that are available out there, like it's amazing. I know that Knit Picks has one that is it's affordable too. I think it's called Chroma. So, I mean, there's lots of yarns available out there for everybody, and this is a great book to be able to use up all those wonderful yarns. I think it's just brilliant you've been able to do that. Oh my gosh, Carol, can you believe it's time to give away prizes?
I love prize giveaway time.
Oh, it's so exciting. And I know that you have something. Do you want to tell everybody what they have a chance to call in and win, and leave a comment on the show notes on marlybird.com for a chance to win?
Well, we're going to give away 2 copies of Self-Striping Yarn Studio. Yay!
So for all of you that are listening in for the first time, welcome. We are glad you are here at the Yarn Thing podcast. We are always blessed to have guests that come on the show that offer prizes to the listeners, both to the live listeners of the show and to people who are able to listen to the show or watch the show as it may be after the fact. What happens is here on the live show, if you're listening live right now, you're watching me, here we are, hi, and you're listening over your phone, hey, pick up your phone and give us a call, 347-539-5589, 347-539-5589 is the guest call-in number. You will call in and you're placed on a switchboard onto my computer. And what will happen is we will come back to that switchboard and we will scroll up and down, like Tammy calls it a roulette wheel. I call it like the Price is Right wheel, how it just spins and spins. We'll just let it go. And when Carol tells me to stop, wherever my cursor is, that's who will win a copy of the book live. Now, if you're not listening live, don't worry. There's still a chance for you to win as well. There's always a chance for you to win. After the podcast today, Tammy's my social media assistant. We call her my social Medusa. And Tammy is in charge of the podcast schedule. She organizes all the guests. She does the show notes, and she's on top of things. But she has a real job too. So she will put up the show notes for today's show at marlybird.com. And that's important for you to know. Once the show is over, you will be able to go to marlybird.com and find the show notes for today's show. Now, all the information might not be filled out yet, but the page will be there. When Tammy gets a chance later on today, probably, she will put a full synopsis of the podcast, including links and images and everything that you might have heard about on the show and you don't want to miss out on will be available there on those show notes. Where are they again? At marlybird.com. That's important because if you want a chance to win a copy of the book, you will go to those show notes and you will leave a reply. Click the leave a reply button and you will leave an actual comment, a reply that includes a keyword that Carol will give us here in just a minute. That keyword is sort of like your entry. It's that little thing that says, hey, I know that here's my proof that I listened to the podcast because here's my keyword. Now, once you've entered that, great, you're good, you're golden. Just hang out and see if you have a chance, if you win. We choose a winner 2 weeks after the original air date of the podcast. And the reason I do that is because I know that we all have lives that get in the way sometimes of listening to the podcast. And you don't have a chance to listen to the show until it's been a couple weeks. And I still want you to have a chance to win. So even if you haven't listened to the show and it's been a couple weeks, go over to the show notes and leave a comment. You never know. You might be the lucky winner. What happens is, after a couple weeks, whatever guest is on that new show, that new guest will help Tammy choose a winner for today's show, and we'll give out a prize. Clear as mud, right? So let's do this. So guest call-in number first, 347-539-5589. That's what you're calling in right now if you're listening live. Otherwise, keep listening right now because you will learn what the keyword is, and Carol is going to help Tammy choose a winner from a previous podcast. So I'm bringing Tammy on. Hello, Tammy.
I'm here.
All right.
Tammy. Hello.
I'm going to mute myself, and you take it away.
All right. Good morning, Carol.
I'm on mute.
Hi, how are ya?
Whew.
And just to qualify, Boris is not a pukey cat.
No.
No, he just occasionally gets hairballs because his hair is so long. Even though I brush him constantly.
Well, and he probably loves it because all that fur probably feels so good.
Purrs,
yeah.
Purrs and purrs. He's a very purry cat.
If everybody that's listening doesn't follow your page for the Boris updates, they are really lacking in what is good in life.
Aw, Boris, and I thank you.
He's such a lovely face to get to see in your Facebook feed. I hope everybody goes and follows you. So, like Marley said, we're going to go and pick a winner. This was the winner that we're picking today was from when Kyle was on a couple of weeks ago with his urban knit collection.
DJ B Rad.
Mm-hmm. Kyle's doing a wonderful job. I don't know if you've gotten to see his new book yet.
I want to like that.
I haven't, but I've heard wonderful things about it.
It's wonderful, wonderful, wonderful.
Did you just say Kyle Kaneki?
Very smart with,
oh, yeah.
And, it's a lot of color
That was
work,
a fun show.
Cables,
did you guys listen to that show?
He's really creative with the things that he put in that collection.
I'll be quiet.
So, like I said, like Marty said, we're going to scroll through this and pick a winner. And everybody was supposed to use "I love Marley" as their phrase.
Oh, that's
right. So Marty got lots of love in these comments. So I'm going to have you tell me when to stop. I'm scrolling now. Stop.
That was abrupt.
Okay. I'm making sure she used the words, and yes, she did. So Rachel said, "Of course we love Marley."
Oh, okay.
I love Marley, and hearing about this book was great. I can't wait for next week's episode too. So I'm going to go ahead and email Rachel. Did you pick out a word or phrase that you want everybody to use in your comment?
I did.
What is that?
Boris.
Chris, you're so cute.
Boris.
Boris.
That's a good one. And I think we've used that before, but you know what? Let's recycle.
I love it.
Reuse, recycle.
Reduce, reuse.
Do Boris the kitty.
Boris the kitty.
Boris the kitty is very good.
What is it? Soft kitty, warm kitty, little ball of fur. That's all I can do.
I like to say that Boris is perhaps one of the few cats in the world who had a book dedicated to him. Because I
Oh,
dedicated Self-Striping Yarn Studio to Boris because he's the most beautiful self-striper of all.
that's so
There you
sweet.
go.
So sweet. All right. So the keyword is Boris, everybody. Thank you, Tammy. And you will have to go to the show notes for today's podcast over at marlybird.com. Now, that's very important once again, because I know many of you leave comments on Facebook, leave comments on Twitter, and leave comments on YouTube now. But in order to be entered for a chance to win the book, you have to go to marlybird.com. Find the show notes for today's show. Usually it's in the drop down menu. You can see where it says show notes, either in the podcast or in the blog section. And then once you find the show notes for today's show, leave the reply there, because that's literally where we scroll through all the comments. I can't go from, Facebook to Ravelry to wherever to find comments. They have to all be in one place. So there you go. And I'm just, in case there's any sort of legal stuff here, I'm just going to say Facebook is not part of this giveaway. It is solely Marly Bird and the Yarn Thing podcast. So Facebook is not liable for anything. I just need to make sure I say that because I'm on Facebook
If you
Live.
get a paper cut from the free book, don't sue Facebook.
Yeah, exactly. Facebook has nothing to do with this. And Carol's a lawyer, so she's like, yeah.
Just saying.
So there you go. All right. So Miss Carol, it's kind of amazing because the last 3 different shows I've done, we've had over 40 call-in listeners trying to win prizes, and it's pretty darn amazing. We have 44 callers today, calling in because they all want your book, Self-Striping Yarn Studio. And I know that once the first one is chosen, the other ones are all going to go and just buy the book. They're all just going to go buy the book and say, I tried. So I'm going to do
mouth to God's
exactly. I'm going to scroll just like Tammy did. I'm scrolling right now, all the way to the bottom, all the way to the top. When you tell me to, I stopped. Oh, I stopped on your name. Okay, I stopped on your name.
My own name?
You did. So do you want me to go above yours or below yours?
Above.
Okay, that is area code 812. Clicking on this, 812, hello?
Skippy!
Who's this?
Suzanne!
Hi, Suzanne!
Suzanne!
Oh my gosh! Oh my gosh, that's like one of the best responses ever. Hi, Suzanne, how are you doing?
I'm doing great. I'm so happy. I just got home from shopping, and I'm walking through my house right now, and I look down at my feet, and I have self-striping socks on that I knit, and I was thinking, this has to be a book that I need to have, because I default to self-striping socks.
Oh my gosh.
Striping yarn. So, I'm so excited!
Excellent.
Carol, I think she's kind of excited about getting the book.
I love it. I love you,
I
Stan.
can't wait.
Oh,
So I have a question, Carol.
yes.
I have a question for you, if you don't mind me asking.
Lay it on me, baby.
Is space-dyed yarn self-striping yarn?
Usually when people call yarn space dyed, what they mean is that it's more of a variegated but not striping per se. Sometimes it refers to machine dyed variegated yarn as opposed to hand painted. So usually that's more of a variegated with small sections of color instead of a striper with long.
Okay, that's great.
That's a good question.
Do you mind if I ask you one more question?
Lay it on me again.
Okay.
I love it.
I do buy a lot of self-striping sock yarn because I love it. Do you recommend winding it from the way it comes? Like, a lot of times it comes in balls. It's not necessarily like a hank already. Like, so it's already it's ready to go. But do you recommend rewinding it just to find out if you have any surprise knots?
Oh, good question.
It's really your own personal call. If you are really insistent on having socks that are identical, truly identical, then it's not a bad idea to wind it because, like you said, you can see if there are any knots, and you can also get a feel for the repeat of the colors.
Okay.
And you can also kind of figure out if it comes in more than one ball, you can figure out where the same point is in each skein in order to make them start at exactly the same point too. You can kind of literally lay each strand side by side and start at the exact same place. So those are reasons why, but it's not essential. It's really a matter of how much you want to be in control of the color changing.
Very
Okay.
cool.
But it sounds like the way you answered, it doesn't necessarily, it's not a deal breaker or essential with the kinds of projects that are in your book.
Right. Most of them, it's not so much laying out one repeat and another repeat in exactly the same order as it is trying to find contrast between one color and another. So, yeah.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay,
Great
great.
questions.
Thank you.
Great questions. So, Suzanne, you know how this works. Email me, marley@marleybird.com with your mailing address and phone number. Make sure you put in the subject line what it is you won, because I will not remember, and we'll get the book sent out to you right away. Very cool. All right. So, yay, Suzanne. Congratulations. Carol, how fun is that?
I'm so honored. And I'm really excited about the questions, too. I always get so into it when people are, like, really.
Those were good questions. Those were really
Yeah,
good
they're
questions.
excellent.
I love it. Well, I love that you were able to put together this book. Do you have any new books on the horizon that people can look forward to as well?
Right now I have some proposals out there. So I'm hoping to hear back, on one or two of them, shortly.
All right.
It's tough, a lot of times when you have a book come out, publishing companies like to wait and see how the sales figures are before they are willing to commit to another one. So.
Yeah, those crazy,
You know how it goes.
those crazy publishers. No, I think
Yeah.
you've done such a great job, and I'm seriously, I'm so proud of you, and I'm so grateful that you and I met in this big wide world of knitting and crochet, because you are just a gem. I love you so much.
Love you too, babe.
All right, hon.
Thank you.
All right, go enjoy the rest of your lunch hour, what you have left, and I'll talk to you soon.
Okay.
All right, bye, Carol.
Take care.
Oh my gosh, I love her. I think she is just absolutely amazing. And the information she's able to bring when she does these books is just really awesome. If you remember, Carol was on the show lately, the last time, talking about her book, Knitting Ephemera. And it's been going like gangbusters. So she's been doing just fantastic. She's on the ball. Absolutely love her. Congratulations to Suzanne and for winning. I think you need to go buy yourself a lottery ticket. You're wearing self-striping yarn. You're saying, I need this book, and you win the book. I think that's awesome. I think that's really awesome. I want to say thank you to all of you listening live today, and all of you who are joining me on Facebook Live. Welcome. And those of you who are tuning in over YouTube and saying, what is this podcast thing? What is she doing here? It's fun. You can join me live on the show every Tuesday and Thursday morning at 10 o'clock Mountain Time, or just catch the show when I post it on YouTube, or join me over here at Facebook Live. On Tuesday, it says I have a mystery guest. Tammy is telling me I have a mystery guest on Tuesday. So I don't even know who the guest is on Tuesday. So you're going to want to make sure you join me on Tuesday for the mystery guest. And there you have it. All right, guys, I hope you enjoyed the show. I'm going to hit my exit music here. Don't forget that I have a brand new class available at Creative Bug, and it's a knitted cocoon cardigan. I'm giving away a prize today on Facebook Live, so you want to make sure you join me over there at, I think I said 7 o'clock tonight. So make sure you join me over there. Thank you to Green Mountain Spinnery, Buffalo Wool Company, Creative Bug, Erin Lane Bags, Lolo by Barmaids, Craftsy.com, Knitters Magazine, XRX Books and Stitches Expos, and last but certainly not least, Red Heart Yarns, where I'm the proud national spokesperson. Hope you enjoyed the show today, and I'll catch you guys on Tuesday. Have a wonderful weekend. Bye. Looking for more Marly Bird? Don't worry, I've got you covered. Click right down there and you will find more videos just like this teaching you how to knit or crochet, all brought to you by Red Heart Yarns. Go ahead, click away. Don't be shy. Don't forget to smash that like button.